Welcome to this exercise on experience curve effects. First, we have here our cost calculation. Starting with material and production costs, we get to our total costs of production, and then adding administrative and sales overheads and costs, we get to our calculated prime costs. That is the current situation of our cost calculation. That's the is situation. And in the second table, we see how our output over the next 8 years will develop and respectively how much our accumulated output will change. In addition to this, based on the output we produce, we learn new things and we have respective experience gains. Those are expressed in this column here. So they show how much we learn from producing more. Based on this experience gains, we can then calculate our unit costs effects. So in other words, by how much do our per unit costs reduce due to additional experiences. And that's actually the part which we need, because this tells us by how much our production costs will reduce. And that's actually the important part with regard to this exercise. When we talk about experience gains here, we talk about experience in the production process. So in this regard, we're talking here about process innovations. Those factors will only apply up to here. They not necessarily directly apply to administration and sales. That would be rather marketing and organizational innovation. But since overheads are calculated as a percentage of the production, we will see the respective multipliers in those two parts as well. But if you are quite strict and conservative, they will only apply directly to those parts up here. Well, so much for the introduction into what we have here. What are we supposed to do with this information? We're asked to calculate the expected prime costs in the 4th and 8th year of production. So first with a reduction factor of 0.72 and then with a reduction factor of 0.61. Well, let's step right into it. So I'm copying the current situation. Year 1 is situation. And then for the year 4, we have this multiplier of 0.72. So we're going to simply multiply all production related costs with this factor 0.72, giving us this new cost calculation for the total cost of production in year 4. As I said, administration and sales overheads are just percentages of the costs of production. So here I just calculate 7% of this, 14% of this. It is again this value times 0.72 because they are percentage values. But as I said, if we are strict, this multiplier should only apply up here because they are really production costs. Well, since the multiplier only applies for production, not for administration and sales, those special costs of sales will always remain the same. Well, we get reduced costs of production, recalculate those two overheads, then we will get also in total reduced calculated prime costs. Of course, since those stay the same, it's not exactly the same factor which we apply here. In year 8, we then, instead of using multiplier of 0.72, we use multiplier of 0.61. So we multiply all our production costs with this factor 0.61, giving us new total cost of production of 55.77. And well, you can do this with all the stuff up here, but in the end, you would only need this new cost of production. So theoretically, could just use this value multiplied with 0.72, have this one, multiplied with 0.61, get that one, and then continue working from here. Because for the prime costs, we only need the total cost of production, and since all the factors will change by the same factor, total cost of production will also reduce by this factor. Well, 7% of this administration overheads, 14% of this sales overheads, special costs of sales again remaining constant. So we get the new recalculated prime costs of 69.78 in year 8. And that's it for this exercise. So simply multiply all production costs with the factor, maybe recalculate overheads, and then recalculate prime costs. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. I say goodbye and see you next time.